Welcome to Advanced Broadcast Technology. I'm your host, Pallab Chatterjee. Traditionally, the broadcast industry has a wrap-up at the end of the year that happens just at the start of the new television season. In honor of that end of the year close, we're doing our predictions for 2018 episode, and with us we have two industry luminaries who've been able to join us. Seated to my immediate right is Allan McLennan, and seated next to him is Eric Greb, who's from the technology side of the industry. Allan is the founder and president of Padem Media Group, which is an industry analyst and consulting services group participating in the future of multi-platform media and entertainment, gaming, advanced advertising, data analytics, and IPTV. To his right is Eric Grab. Eric is the VP of Software Engineering of Jaunt VR, which is a hardware and content company in the virtual reality and 360 content space. In this episode, we're looking at what are the key trends coming up in 2018. There's a variety of technologies that are going on and issues related to content creation, distribution for broadcast, cinema, physical media, and streaming media, all happening at the same time. I'd like to start off with a brief discussion and summary of kind of the perspective from the two guests. And Eric, if you could kind of start us off with what you see is going on in this 360 and VR emerging area as opposed to our normal 120-degree view of life.
Well, it's exciting to have an immersive experience, and it started basic where you're watching a 2D screen and a 2D rectangle, and of course now we went to 3D, and now we're going 360 video, 360 3D, increasing amounts of freedom and movement, and to full interactivity. And that's going to be a big theme in 2018. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to shift from a first-person view of looking at things, and then it's going to shift to also adding third-person views. And so that could be thought of as moving from 360 video to augmented reality. So augmented reality gives you a view into overlaying information on things. And so you can imagine telling a story by looking at it in one view, or by looking at maybe a scene or something. You can actually maybe touch, like, I want to be that person. And then boom, you can go and be that person and see the 360 view. And that level of control is what consumers are going to be really craving, and once they start to get that experience, it's hard to go backwards. And so I see one of the predictions for 2018 is that people will get increasing amounts of control, increasing amounts of interactivity, and the immersion is going to get deeper and deeper. And it's going to be expected, actually, if you have an entertainment franchise or entertainment property, you have to think of it more in terms of an experience.
Staying with that theme as far as predictions in a cinematic environment. What we're talking about here is an individual's experience, be it whether it's a headset or whatever it might be. There is an active effort within the cinematic environment, as far as the theaters are concerned, to try to bring this over into the theaters so that it can be, once again, a group experience. But there is an active exploration in trying to make that happen, and that is very real today and will happen over the course of the next 12 to 18 months.
So you're seeing that, right now the theater experience in recent years has shifted from just being passive fixed seats that have very simple surround sound to now having huge multi-surround sound. It's gonna they have the seats with the motion involved with them. They have all sorts of involved lighting that's now part of the scenery lighting for going through. Do you see this being further enhanced to keep the cinema experience unique?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think yes, but at the same time, an individual's ability to experience these is now becoming right to you. Put on a head-mounted display, you can see this. I think there's going to be an interest in virtual reality arcades or virtual reality cafes where you can come and experience this. It's interesting because you go to an event and you are sitting in the seat and you see something. Why not get the best seat in the house wherever you want and actually move around and control it? The potential of this to put people in different places and actually really make immersion be there question is, do you need it in a theater? I think for the hardware that's needed at the beginning, maybe some, but I mean, right now this is coming fast because we're seeing all the major headset manufacturers invest in this in a huge way so that they can be a part of this, and content's being created to do this. And
that comes back to the consumer electronics industry of whether or not we're going to see this for the holiday season coming up, the kind of devices that are going to be embraced on this individual platform. But to answer your question as far as the cinematic, somewhat like what 3D was a few years ago, it was, for the home, for the television at home, and never quite caught on. But in the theater, especially in the large scale theaters, the 70 millimeters, it's pretty impressive to go to a film and see a blockbuster in 3D, and that's kind of become the norm for at least myself in taking a look at some of the more broader distributed films that are out in the marketplace. Coming back to the theatrical presentations for an individual from a headset, absolutely. I mean that is going to be the next battlefield, I should say, for the war when it comes to the actual capabilities of the consumer electronics environment to be able to sell it, and you're going to see a lot.
And it's accessible. This is the thing is this is not something that's thousands and thousands of dollars. It's under $1,000 price point, actually a few $100s. It actually leverages your phone you probably already have.
Yes.
Downloading an app you can get off the internet and start exploring content right away. So you can do that right now, and this is happening. And so the acceleration of this in 2018, I think, is what's really going to be interesting. So we're at the nascent stage of some of this, because really some of the technology around VR and AR have been around a long time. This is not like new, right? But it's been, now is the time that it's happening, where the price point's down, the capabilities are up, all the check boxes in making this happen. So I think we're going to see 2018 be a wave of this, and it's going to be, I think the thing the mistake is to over-categorize it, right? I mean, I think we're talking about a spectrum of different technologies that come into play, whether you say VR or AR or MR, mixed reality, or something in between. It's really a spectrum, and creating technology is what I'm excited always doing, is to be there during these shifts. And I do think a shift is happening where we're gonna see more people in this full immersion mode. And it's that compelling.
Now, in the full immersion mode and with VR, one of the recent challenges has not been the technology, but the creation of a business model for it. And a similar shift is going on in the advertising marketplace, where they're trying to figure out how the whole thing works. And now you're seeing a lot of discussion about moving from 30-second ads to the split 15s.
Yeah.
And now going from the split 15-second ads all the way down to 6-second ads for going through. Do you see cost and the features, though people are learning the technology, of making shorter run content, 1 to 2 minute content, as opposed to 30-minute, 60-minute content for going into these VR vehicles first?
Well, the VR vehehicles.
VR vehicles and the advertising, a lot of it is driven by ads. So
let's just take a look at where we're at right now. The sheer fact of being able to measure and the understanding of the data, that how someone views the advertising and what their interests are, is really the holy grail at this time. Being able to take that viewer's interest and map that to an existing client's product is key. The length of the commercial really comes down to the audiences that are there, and that comes down to specifics. And it's not so much being that it's particular age demographics, it's interest demographics. It's what someone wants to participate in, and that then goes to the distribution of that content across the many different platforms that are out and being able to be viewed. So it all boils down to reach, and if you can reach an audience, depending on what that age or whatever that community is, then it does come back to the form factor. Yes, when it comes to Instagram or a few others, yes, short attention span clips, absolutely. But as you get closer and closer to the purchase decision point, you do need a little bit more information. So we are definitely to a point when it comes to VR.
Well, hey, there's something you can do in head-mounted displays you can't do anything else, which is have a precise attention model of what the person is looking at, right? You know exactly where you're looking. And that's very powerful on multiple levels. Talk about a new level of analytics and things you can do to process this. This is very powerful. And so advertising is interesting. We have push and pull, right? And giving people more control is about letting them pull in what they want at the right times. And I think, look, the notion of push advertising was just a different era. It really was. And people have different expectations. People value Netflix, for example, because it has no advertising overtly. It certainly can put different titles and things in front of you, but it's not pushing individual products. And so I think there's a value people are able to filter more than they've ever done before. And I think the value is getting people to actually show interest in what they want. If I really want to get that car, maybe I will, hey, I want to drive it virtually, right? So why not let me do that? Here's a 3-second ad or maybe a link, then let the user take their attention, put it in, and then see exactly what's happening. What am I looking at the car? What am I excited about? What am I noticing? And that can all create a very powerful feedback loop. Talk about the Holy Grail, right? This goes beyond what people have ever thought possible with advertising. Now, again, you gotta be careful that we don't overdo it per se, but the idea is that we can now see what people are looking at. They'll provide positive feedback loops to get people what they actually really want and help them find things.
It really comes down to being able to serve that up. And let's not forget that while Netflix doesn't have an advertising model, nor does Amazon have an advertising model, they are creating new content. And in content, there's as old as films have been around until there's product placement. And so that you're going to see more and more. And no one's talking about it, but that if you watch any of the Netflix series or you watch any of the Amazon, you will see products in there that are being very much presented in front of the viewer.
Well, and I mean the fact that what you see,
it's all good.
Yeah, what you see is, we can have green screens all over us right now. I mean, where are we really? You don't know, and so we could be projecting all kinds of places.
I do like this view, though.
This is a great view. This is really fantastic. It's beautiful. But you have to question, is it real or not? And the notion is if you're watching something customized for you, I mean, maybe things could be replaced. I mean, they already do this in sporting events, right? I mean, it's local, geographically located. Look, talk about individual. Give me the things I'm interested in. Put them there. It's possible to do that. But once again, push versus pull. I mean, I think there's a whole generation which is avoiding, don't push ads to me. Like I want to gather information. It's a whole different mode of operation when you can look at links and find things. But yeah, product placement's probably the real hook to get people in there, but just people are switching ads off or they're tuning out, and it's tough.
Well, one of the other interesting trends that I'm not sure if it's actually going to continue is also being driven from advertising. I'm not sure if you saw the new ad campaign for Wii Yogurt.
Not yet.
For who?
Wii Yogurt. It's a new, I'm trying to remember, it was one of the major, it's owned by Yoplait. It's a new product line. It's a French yogurt in this little glass jar.
Ooh la la.
The standard commercial for television is 30 seconds long. And it has this French girl who's eating the yogurt. Then there's a 15-second version of it, there's a 10-second version of it, there's a 6-second version, all in the same storyline. Then they made 4 separate 6 and 10-second clips from it. But then they made an enhanced 1-minute version.
Sure.
That's HDR, 4K resolution, surround sound for going through with an enhanced story. And it's actually got credits showing that it's one of the directors who's doing films for Netflix created the commercial. So they're now pulling longer run advertising content as
but why not?
media content for going through.
If you want to reach somebody, you have to connect with them, right? And it's not about just repetition, it's about impact, right? And so that's why when we have tremendous interest from advertisers wanting to get their brands out there with 360 video and immersive experiences. The numbers are off the charts about how much more engaging it is when someone actually experiences something there, because you just feel it more. You're in control, I can look at what I want. That's having huge impact. So if you're trying to advertise something, 360 is the way to go, and immersive is the way to go. That's where you're going to get the most, I think, deep connection, where people understand what you want. Or what you're selling, and then understand how they're going to want it and use it instead of brand, instead of image. That's so much more visceral and impactful when you're in 360.
Yeah, and it's truly in the way we're going when it comes to that. But you also just mentioned like the 60-second, engaging with the audience in and of itself. That has been something that has been attempted for many times over the years in theaters to be able to deliver that. Now that we have the capability of serving that up, and a person has the choice of watching it all or moving past it, is the real trick. So having somebody be able to put a recognized director putting his story out there, it is part of a story, and that's probably going to be a test to how many of those stories and how long are those segments going to be. That may be the 1 minute segment. Point being is that we're actually in a very interesting time right at the moment. While we talked earlier about where the innovation and technology has gotten us, we're starting to now being able to experience what that is allowing us to create. And that creation is not only with what the content is and what the advertising is, but also in the new business models that is beneficial to the overall culture and community as a whole.
So, but it's still messaging and story that you're trying to get out.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that, look, the techniques that enable to tell better stories, there's been multiple technological innovations, over time, but in some ways, once again, a single rectangular image is, first it was black and white and it was color, and it hasn't changed tremendously. That language of telling stories through that is pretty established. I think what's exciting is the new ways to tell stories, where yes, you have things on apps and you have things on 360 and you have increasing experience where you can find information, and if someone wants to, if they want to connect with a brand, they can go pretty deep into finding the information there. So let them do that, and that's going to, it's going to change the way people interact with this. And I think the tools for HDR, high dynamic range, right? Making brighter brights has a huge quality. People notice it. It's like better colors. Wow, that looks real. I mean, you can tell. You look at a screen today. It's like, yeah, I know that's a screen. But if you look at some awesome high dynamic range and high color space screens, you're like, whoa, that something's about this, right? And I think the industry now is shifting to embrace those technologies. And yes, it's tricky, right? Doing these increased color volumes, there's a lot of room to make mistakes, and so it can look really great or it can also look really bad. So I think there's still, as people get a hold of these technologies, they have to learn how to use them to maximum effect. And unlike the past, maybe like they had long periods of time to do this, it's happening very fast now. So if you want to jump into this, you have to, there's a lot of pieces, right? So you can't just pick one. I mean, that's why we offer a studio and have to help do this, because the medium itself is changing. Right? The way you tell stories, the way you technically capture them to give them the most impact is changing right now, and so that's happening fast. I think 2018 is going to be one of these years where, yeah, either you're on that, either you're creating like crazy and using all the latest technology, or you're not, and you're going to fall behind.
And you said something really interesting there, and that is that's bad. And really what we're getting down to is that the appetite has been whetted for the audience of wanting this content, and receiving the content is something that is rather a key element in all of this. And as we move forward, like ABR we talked about earlier, as far as being able to recognize what your network connection is and what the device that you're watching it on, all of that is really great. Once you start watching it, if there's any kind of flutter or anything that starts to fail, it's no longer television. That's right. It's delivered via the internet, and that is, for 2018, is something that's going to be well addressed with the new platforms that are coming out, both mobile, wireless, and also fixed. And that's going to be able to have us have that kind of connection that we will then move to a new level of convenience, and it'll become a norm. So the behavior of the viewer will shift, and they'll get, once again, used to having the content delivered. And if you step out of that norm anywhere, you're going to start seeing some models fail. And that comes back to, just really quick, with when it comes to VR. This is a bandwidth hog. This consumes a lot, and so that comes back to codecs and enhanced distribution platforms, all the elements that seem to always be in the background that we don't really ever address. But for those of us that live in this world, distribution is key to make sure that the audience has the experience that they want. And so that is something we really work hard on.
And there's lots of room for technological innovation there, actually. This is optimization. Actually, there's something else about 2018, and I think this has been happening and it can continue to happen, is we're in an optimization phase on a lot of things, right? We are trying.
That's a good way to look at it.
Look, the internet IP protocol is being used everywhere, not just the internet. It's being used to transfer all the data from cameras, and from the very beginning, everything is becoming switched. And as we talk about ATSC3 briefly, that's packet switching broadcast, right? Enable essentially is taking broadcast spectrum and turning it into part of the internet is one quick way to think about that. That's powerful because there's huge amounts of bandwidth there. And so if you can start sending huge amounts of experiences out through broadcast, that's very powerful. And as it meshes together, it becomes a hybrid that's also very powerful. So I think that's coming, and everyone's trying to figure, well, how do I tune that properly? Or can I optimize here? Or can I do this? Can I use the direction of what I'm looking at to tell me, oh, send more bandwidth that way because that's what I'm looking at in a 360 context, or use a better protocol here, or do better encoding, and those are things that I'm looking at all the time, right? You have to optimize.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on that real quick, Pallab. I'm sorry. The fact of it is, like with ATSC3, that's mobile, and being able to push that out into the marketplace. What that brings, which hasn't been addressed, is the capability for broadcasters to actually participate in this IP revolution. It's not just the big boys that are out there, the Googles, the Facebooks, and all the excitement that's based around their business models, but it's actually the broadcasters now being able to reach a new audience, reach their existing audience, to be able to continue and keep their models, their advertising models in place. And one of the nice things about ATSC3, and I'm not advocating anything, 5G, we can talk about all these platforms, is the sheer fact that pop-up channels can start happening. In 5 minutes, you can put a pop-up, like the baseball game here in San Francisco. Let's talk about the Giants. They're actually having a great game, and they're going into extra innings, and it's coming up against the news, which the news is the #1 revenue generator for the station. It's like, viewers were moving the game to channel 365, and we're going to have the news come up, where it should be. We can now do that with ATSC 3.0. And so that changes things, and getting back to the old broadcast model. And that's not old, that's new. That's being able to capture the audience that is really interested in your programming.
Now, in that vein, a lot of this discussion has been on the distribution side for going through. There's also the content capture side. That's going through a huge shift of analog to digital.
Yes.
And you were mentioning that the things are going to switch network. There's a thing called the IP standards for going through for the cameras. And one of the differences in the past was you had professionals, which were basically working with the analog. And then you had consumers, which were working with just stored media. And then the prosumers were the guys in the middle that kind of dealt with pseudo-streaming video or capture and putting it up quickly for going through. Under these new lines where professionals are going to be using streaming cameras, now mind you, they're at a different price point and content level and bandwidth requirement, but fundamentally a person can put on a show almost for nothing with equipment they have around, with their cell phone and a good connection someplace. For going through and being able to stream content that goes to an audience. Now the question is now the difference between the professionals the ability to package that into guaranteed delivery and in a content that's a story above what's being captured by the lens? Or are the content creation specialists just basically going to become technicians operating the gear?
Oh, well, gosh. I mean, I think that's a lot in there. I think look, the barrier to entry to creating content is low, but it's always, to create awesome things, you generally need awesome stories and a whole bunch of things put together. I think lowering that barrier to entry is one of my goals and what I do, and taking from the camera all the way through the whole pipeline, all the way to distribution, all the way to an app or someplace is, there's a lot of pieces and steps to do that. It gets complicated. You want the barrier to be low enough that you can actually get more people using that. There's still always going to be some barrier to entry there. There'll always be professionals in all of this. And I think the hope is the professionals get so much more leverage with the wave of technology that is bolstering their abilities to do things. I mean, they're riding the IP wave. I mean, everything's becoming internet protocol. Great, ride that wave to reach professionals. In the same way that consumers are riding the wave of, Moore's Law and the fact that we have, little portable TV stations in our pockets now as mobile phones, those things have helped everybody.
Taking that, it's a matter of, let's look at something as an example. YouTube, when it started, is like, oh my God, everybody's going to be posting up all this video and it's going to change the television model. Didn't do it. It took years to be able to get that to a professional level and people participating in there to create channels, and then ultimately now the entire network that is YouTube Red, the capabilities, what's there. That doesn't diminish the want of individuals or corporations or whatever posting things on YouTube to utilize the distribution platform. The ability then, though, to be able to edit anything from a novice, being able to put something together from a program standpoint, is going to be facilitated with new types of products as recently as Sling Studio. And Sling Studio is like, pretty impressive. But you mentioned before, there's also WeVideo. There's people that have the capabilities of doing this kind of editing in the cloud. And again, that's the uplinks are really the gating factor of being able to do that really on an ongoing basis. So all in all, the industry as a whole and predictions going forward into 2018 is we're in a really good spot for the industry as a whole. We're going to see a lot more choices for consumers when it comes to the types of programming that they want as individuals versus broad groups of individuals and audiences. So we're right at that point where that's going to be benefited, and advertising will be a very key component of it.
Okay. So last comment, what are you looking forward to most in 2018, Eric?
Oh boy, I'm looking for greater and greater immersion. Right? I want to be taken away when I stick on my headset and when I can have a larger choice of entertainment, of content. Right? I mean, this is the shift from where I'm probably going to stop watching less Netflix and more of Jaunt video and some of the things that are being produced, because I know it's coming, and I think I'm looking forward to Ready Player One. And I think there's going to be a lot of excitement around the ability of virtual environments and the kind of immersion that you can get in all of that.
That leaves it for a whole new another subject for another time.
Yes.
To be able to drill into that.
So what are you looking forward to that's most exciting that's on your horizon for 2018?
The refinement of personalization, the ability for any individual to watch what they want when they want. And that capability is very much here and now. It's a matter of being able to have the privacy issues, the capabilities, the delivery of all the different components of the ecosystem to the individual audience. We're there, and I'm very excited about that, as well as the immersion. I mean, I certainly want to put on a headset and go visit, Gallipoli in 1948. It's like, however drastic that may be, it's something that's interesting. The immersion will take and allow me to participate.
First, thank you very much for a very enjoyable conversation.
It's nice of you to have us.
We look forward to having you join us next week on Advanced Broadcast Technology.